Well, for more, I'm joined by our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, this time last year, Andrew Cuomo's candid updates on the coronavirus pandemic made him essentially a household name across the United States. He was seen as a hero. Tell us more about the allegations that led to this rather uncharacteristic and surprising decision to step down.
The adjective we hear with this report, a report by the New York State Attorney General, is searing. And it was really nothing short of that. It was 165 pages, meticulously, really in great detail, chronicling the allegations from 11 separate women. These were both current and former government state employees. And they were, like I said, searing. In many cases, you had 7 women who accused him of inappropriately groping or touching them. You had a number of women who said that he made offensive or condescending, demeaning sexual comments about them, directly to them. So, verbal harassment as well, in addition to, more physical harassment. And others who said that they kissed him. There was testimony in which he reached under a woman's blouse and started groping, touching her breast. Another, he ran his finger down her spine from her neck all the way down her back. These types of things are behavior that, in some cases, when the women, according to this report, would come forward and file complaints, the governor would retaliate against them. He and his aides were sort of part of a cabal that circled the wagon, so to speak, and made sure that they tried to either minimize or try to ensure that these allegations, these women were either discredited or that their allegations would basically be dead on arrival. They would just totally be ineffective. Let me just show you the timeline of his fall, because it was abrupt. And what's quite stunning, you used the word stunning, and that's the word. This is the end of a political dynasty. Cuomo wasn't just a man who was known, became sort of the household name of the pandemic response for his daily TV briefings. He was almost like America's therapist in many cases. Beyond New York State, Americans gathered around their televisions to watch him. He was also a man who embraced progressive policies. He enacted, same-sex marriage in New York State. He enacted gun control legislation. So he was embraced by a lot of Democrats. But look at this. I mean, his fall from grace, like I said, stunning doesn't even begin to describe it. So last year, in 2020, he was still that household name for the pandemic response. He had come out with a book. He was seen as perhaps a potential next president, a foil to Donald Trump, the anti-Donald Trump. Then an aide comes forward, accuses him of sexual harassment. February, 2 months later, a second aide comes forward. It just became a domino effect. Says that he talked to her in private about his her sex life behind closed doors. March 3rd, Cuomo, he says, I'll cooperate with the investigation, but, quote, I am not going to resign. That was just back in March. Biden came out before the report was released. Joe Biden says, if this report corroborates, confirms the allegations, Governor Cuomo should step down, a fellow Democrat to a fellow Democrat. And then the report itself, Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women. That was really the breaking point. Cuomo was always a man who made quite a few enemies because he had an extremely aggressive, forceful personality. He alienated a lot of people, not just in New York State, but beyond. So he didn't have many allies in the end. He was abandoned. Cuomo resigned August 10th.
And Doug, you have just given extensive details on the allegations that he faces. This is all the more ironic because he had also cast himself as a champion of the Me Too movement. Has he shown any remorse now?
Yeah, look, here's the thing with Cuomo. He made a speech, a 21-minute resignation speech, with a lot of people say that it was a very self-serving speech because while in a sense he apologized to the victims themselves, he denied any improper misconduct. He called this a politically motivated controversy by people really who've been waiting to bring him down. And one of the notable lines from this, and you mentioned the Me Too movement, he really did see himself as this sort of, perhaps a dinosaur, a victim of generational shifts that he didn't fully appreciate. And he said, quote, in my mind, I've never crossed the line, but I didn't realize the extent to which the line has been redrawn. So it was almost a plea for people's, sympathy or empathy, if you will, that, I really didn't think I'd done anything wrong. I didn't realize how much things had shifted. I'm just a dinosaur, a politician, a charming politician. This is the way I am. I've always been very, very, perhaps overly personable with people. I like that sort of contact with people, both men and women. So he was pleading for people's sort of sympathy and empathy. It didn't work. His victim says he knew exactly what he was doing. This was a man who was a lawyer. This is a man who knew the laws. He could try to cast himself as, a member of a champion of the Me Too generation, but in the end, he was very much one of the protagonists who was continuing to perpetuate the practices that the Me Too generation tried to take aim at.